Hello, April? Yes, it's me, Beth. I was getting out of the shower when my phone rang. I wanted to punch the answering machine, but I didn't have time. What's the matter, April? You sounded so desperate on your answering machine. I just got home from shopping and thought I'd better call you. What's the matter? I did a stupid thing, and when I tell Dave about it, he'll divorce me. What's wrong, April? I slept with Brad tonight. God, I feel awful. He invited me to dinner when I danced with him at the reunion last night, and for some ungodly reason I went. Then we went to his room and had sex. When I tell Dave, I know he'll want a divorce. I don't know what to do, she cried. God, April, don't tell Dave. He doesn't need to know you made a big mistake. Isn't Brad back in New York today? Yeah, but I hate myself. Brad went home after we had sex. I love my husband, I really do. It's just, Brad was my first, and I was thinking about old times, and I really screwed up, and now I'm going to lose Dave. Look, April, you made a mistake, a big mistake. It's over. Brad lives in New York. He's married too, so he's not going to brag about it. Let it go. Be the best wife and mother you can be. Don't deny David anything and make love to him all the time. You will have to live with the fact that you cheated on your husband. Don't lose him and your marriage over a big mistake. You're right, Beth. That wasn't so good either. David is a much better lover than Brad. I think I'll take your advice. I'll just have to live with it. This was a phone conversation from 10 years ago. We had and still have one of those answering machines that rings 4 times and gives you a message. If you answer while the other person is still on the line, it records the conversation. That's exactly what happened to April. She left to go to the store, and when I walked in and turned on the message, that's exactly what I heard. I was completely dumbfounded. I had no idea what to do. My beautiful wife and mother of my 3-year-old daughter had cheated on me with her ex-boyfriend. I didn't know what to do. I needed to make a decision right now, so I took the tape away and put a new one in the machine. I rummaged through the clothes hamper and found the pink panties she'd worn that morning. The stains were still slightly damp. I put the tape and panties in a bag and hid them in the basement. I was going to save them for evidence if I needed them. Let me tell you a little bit about our lives. April and I, along with Brad and Beth, went to the same high school. Brad and April were known to everyone as the couple until Brad was caught by April kissing and fondling Mary Lou. When she saw them, she yelled at Brad and told him she never wanted to see him again. Of course, he tried to talk her into coming back with him, but she always refused. That's when April and I started dating. I think at first she did it to get even with Brad, but she ended up falling in love with me. Of course, I liked her throughout high school. I just didn't stand a chance when Brad was around. Brad was noted in the yearbook as most apt to succeed. He was a soccer athlete and played baseball. April was labeled as Miss Congeniality and the prettiest girl in the class. I was labeled too. MacGyver, Mr. Cheney. I was named MacGyver because of a TV show where Mac could fix or mend anything. I looked like him, but certainly not as good as good old MacGyver. Some friends even called me McDav. April and Brad were prom queen and king, but she didn't want to spend much time with him. In fact, she was my date, and he took Mary Lou. I have to take a minute and tell you about Mary Lou. She was beautiful and big-breasted. Every guy I knew, including me, squeezed Mary Lou's breasts. And here's a surprise. After graduating from high school, Mary Lou went into a convent. I swear to God, she's a nun now and she's called Sister Mary Lou. After graduating from high school, Brad left to go to university in New York. He wanted to become a lawyer. After college, he wanted to stay in New York and become a lawyer in the Big Apple. April went to community college and learned secretarial skills. I went to school to become a mechanic, an automotive repair specialist. We all got our wishes. After college, April and I fell in love. We did everything together. When we got married, she got pregnant. We were very happy. We had a baby girl that we named Carly. Of course, she was our little joy. I opened up my auto repair shop. I literally had more work than I could do in a reasonable amount of time, and I hired 2 guys to work for me. In those days, people wanted their cars repaired quickly, and we prided ourselves on our full-service shop. I even opened for half days on weekends so I could get the work done when it was needed. Life was good. Everything was wonderful. My parents were very proud of me. April's parents thought I was cute and a good provider, but would want April to wait until Brad got back. You can't change everyone's mind. That was my philosophy. I tried my best to be a husband and a father. The 5th year of the reunion was approaching. I didn't want to go there, although I wouldn't mind seeing how a few of the girls I had met were doing. I'd seen many of them when they brought their cars in for repairs. We had a class of good-looking women. Of course, April retained her beauty and personality. She really wanted to go to the reunion, so we went. April looked great, though. She always looked good. I think she dressed a little sexier for her old classmates, including Brad. When I told her how good she looked, she replied that she needed to maintain her title of prettiest. She also said that she dresses for me. Of course, I replied, yes, of course. We got to the reunion, and of course Brad came running over to say hi to us. He really wanted to see April. He didn't care about me. I shook his hand and asked him where his wife was. He said she couldn't make it and ran their office until he returned Sunday night. She was his secretary before they were married. She told him she would remain his secretary. Something told me she wore the pants in the family. I talked to all the members of the class. I danced with a few of the girls in our class. Every time I danced with someone, I noticed that April was dancing with Brad. It made me a little angry. I told her about it, and she started dancing with other classmates. We ended the reunion by dancing the last few dances together. Some of the class said they wanted to meet for lunch the next day before those who were traveling went home. I told them I couldn't make it because I had some cars to fix in the morning. April said she would try to come if she could get her mom to watch the baby. I wanted to object, but that would make me look bad, and April never did anything that made me distrust her. I got up early and went to the store while April was still asleep. I had to work a little later than usual. When I got home, it was about 5 o'clock in the evening. There was a note on the table from April saying that she was going to pick up our daughter. I saw the answering machine blinking and listened to it. When April got home, she said her mom would keep Carly overnight so we could be alone. She took me into the bedroom and made passionate love to me. I asked her what the reason was, and she said she wanted to show me how much she loved and cared for me. I guess that was the beginning of the sorry I was to receive. I don't know if I did the right thing by not telling her that I knew about the affair. I believe that she was truly sorry, and the way she made love to me was fantastic. We probably made love that night more times than we ever had in our entire marriage. It didn't stop that night. The next morning, she took care of my morning boner. I had to call the store and warn my guys that I was going to be a little late. Life was better than usual, and she was always good. I really felt like she was trying to make it up to me for something I didn't even know about. She ended up getting pregnant from all the sex we were having. Life was good. We had another baby girl. We named her Danny after me. My name is David Daniel Moore. Over the years, Danny became my little sweetheart. Carly always stayed with her mom in the kitchen or somewhere else. Danny always wanted to go to the garage with me. I took her with me as often as I could. I didn't want her in the garage too often. I had a small apartment over the garage where I could relax or even take a nap. It also had a kitchen and a bathroom. That way I could take a shower instead of going home smelly and looking like a grease monkey. I used to take Danny there to play games whenever I could. She wanted to spend time with her dad, and I wanted to spend time with her too. We took the girls everywhere. They loved the amusement parks. We took them with us so they could ride all day long. Of course, Danny wanted to go on rides with me, and Carly wanted to go on rides with her mom. Damn, I loved my family. I almost wish I had never found out about the cheating. Life would have been perfect. It was time for our 10-year reunion. I really didn't want to go. I was afraid of what I might do to Brad if he showed up. My life had been good for the last 5 years. I didn't want it to deteriorate any further. I asked April if she wanted to attend, and she said she didn't want to go. I was happy. Just in case friends called to convince April otherwise, I bought us tickets to Kings Island Amusement Park. I rented motel rooms for us for 2 nights, making sure we would not be available for company. It was a lot of work for me. April was still trying, I could see that. We had a great time at the park again. My girls loved it, and April couldn't have been more loving. As soon as the girls went to bed at the motel, she was ready for sex. We made quiet love that night. Watching April have an orgasm while at the same time trying to be quiet was great. Damn, I was a lucky man. Both girls were in school at the time, and April took a part-time job as an assistant in the school office. That way, she could be there for the girls in her spare time. My business was growing too. I hired 2 more employees. Life was good. The school offered DNA testing to all students. That way, if there was a problem, the parents wouldn't have to find donors. The worst-case scenario, which no one wanted to talk about, was that if a child went missing, they could be identified. We tested both Carly and Danny. We were supposed to pick up the results 3 weeks later at the doctor's office. April had to work at school that day, and she asked if I could slip past the doctor and pick up the results. I had no problem saying yes. After I walked into the office, the doctor told me their results. He said he was surprised that the girls looked so much alike, since they were only half-sisters. My mind went blank. The doctor asked if I was okay, and I wondered what he meant by half-sisters. He said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything." I didn't know. "You know what, Doc? Are you saying they have 2 different fathers?" Oh my God, I couldn't believe this was happening to me. "I'm sorry, David." I shouldn't have said anything. The tests showed that one parent is different in every test. "Doc, can you give me a test?" "I need to know for sure." "I'm pretty sure, but I need the results of the test." The doctor reluctantly took my blood. He said he would hurry up and try to get the results back in a week. He apologized to me again and said he was sorry. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Doc, I am not the biological father of one of my girls. I will tell you right now that they are both still my daughters, and I will love them equally. I am the only father they know, and if I find out that you have told anyone about this conversation, we will go in circles." "Dave, my lips are sealed." I went home with the results. April looked at them, but they meant nothing to her. Just a bunch of dots on a graph unless you knew how to read them. After she looked at them, I was pretty sure she didn't know that one of our daughters wasn't biologically mine. I went back and got the results a week later. I was right. My little pride and joy, Danny, was not my biological daughter. I knew it had to be an affair with Brad. God, I hated what she'd done to me. I hoped no one would ever find out. I wasn't even going to tell April. For the next couple weeks, I was depressed. April asked me what was wrong, and I told her I wasn't feeling well. She said that maybe I should see a doctor. I told her I had taken some medicine and it should help. In fact, I just drank almost a pint of whiskey and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and there was little Danny lying on my arm. Time passed, and I came to my senses a little. Life around me hadn't changed, and little Danny was still my favorite. April was still as loving and sweet as ever. One day, Beth called and talked to April. After they talked, April told her that Beth and her husband Mark were separating. They were divorcing after 10 years of marriage. She said it was because of irreconcilable differences. Beth didn't say anything else. Life went on. April and her secret, me and my 2 secrets. It was time for the 15-year reunion. Carly was 13 at the time and Danny was 10. April said that Beth wanted her to go to the reunion since she was on the committee with Beth that year. It would be hard not to go if you planned it. I really didn't want to go, but I certainly wasn't going to let April go alone. We went to the reunion. The classmates looked older. Many of them we hadn't seen in 10 years, since we had missed the last reunion. Brad showed up, of course, again without his wife. He held out his hand for me to shake, and I told him, "Brad, I'm tired of pretending. I don't like you and never have. I'm not going to shake your hand, and I don't expect you to spend the entire meeting with my wife." April looked at me and said, "David, how could you talk so badly to Brad? God, I'm embarrassed." She looked at Brad and started apologizing for me, so I just waved my hand in disgust and walked away. Later, she came up to me and started arguing with me. "How could you do that, David? Brad didn't do anything to deserve this. He's always treated you with respect." I almost snapped and told him everything, but I finally said, "All he wants is to spend the whole night next to you, and we both know it. If you want him that bad, hell, here he is. Go get him." April ran crying into the ladies' room. Beth overheard part of the conversation and ran after her. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I'd had enough. I walked over to the bar and started drinking. Soon, April came back and said she was going to meet up with some classmates. I watched her, and she was really staying away from Brad. I think she danced with him once all evening. I was practically sitting at the bar by myself. Every once in a while, someone would come up and I would talk to them. When the meeting was over, April had to help me to my car. She told me how much I'd embarrassed her, and then she gave me a silent lecture. When we got home, I went straight to bed. The alarm went off and I felt like crap. It was Sunday, but I had promised a few people to get their cars done. I got up and went to work. As I worked, I felt ashamed of the way I acted at the reunion. Sure, I hated Brad and was mad at April, but neither knew why. I called a couple guys at work. Since it was Sunday, I'd have to spend a few extra bucks, but I was going to drive home and take the family out to dinner. When I got home, the house was empty. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The answering machine blinked as I rewound it. April must not have answered in time again, and I heard the message. "Hi," April said. "Hey girl, what are you up to?" It was Beth. "Hey Beth, just got out of the shower when I heard the phone ring." "What's wrong?" "Lunch." "Do you want to come to lunch with a group of classmates?" "Who's coming, Beth?" "Besides you and me, there's half the class." "Can you make it?" "Brad's going, Beth?" "David will kill me if I go to lunch with Brad." "For heaven's sake, April. This is lunch with former classmates, not sex with one ex-boyfriend. Besides, you didn't even talk to Brad last night, and it's just lunch. After the way David embarrassed me last night, it would do him good." "What time and where, Beth?" "Holiday Inn at noon." "Okay, but I have to get home before David gets off work. He has to be home by 5 or earlier." That's it. She did it again. I went downstairs and pulled out the bag I'd had 10 years ago. I shrink-wrapped it to make sure no air would get in. Then I started packing up my stuff. I was going to move and stay in the apartment above the garage. Most of my personal belongings were in my truck, and 2 suitcases were at the door waiting for April. At 4 o'clock, she showed up at the door. She was wearing a mini dress with a deep neckline. Jewelry and all, she looked dressed for reprisal. "David, what are you doing home? I thought you were working until 5 o'clock?" "I felt ashamed of the way I treated you yesterday, so I thought I'd make it up to you and take you out to dinner." "It looks like you've already eaten." "David, there's something I have to tell you." "Before you say anything, I want you to hear something." I listened to the recorded message. "Oh God, David, we weren't doing anything. We were just having lunch. I'm not going to do anything to hurt you. You have to believe me," she cried. "Let me tell you something, April, and then we'll see if you can say the same. Since we've been married, I've never once had sex with another person. Can you say that, April?" "David, to be honest, we only had lunch. There were about 30 people from the class there. Ask anyone. Brad wanted to do something, but I wouldn't let him. I told him no, and if he tries it again, I'll tell you. And then I slapped him, David. You have to believe me, David. Absolutely nothing happened, honestly." "Then let me hear you say what I said, or are you lying?" "Okay, David. Honestly, I haven't had sex with anyone since we got married. Now, will you let me explain what happened so we can forget about it and make up?" "Not yet. I have another tape for you." I pulled out the tape and she saw the pink panties and cried out. "God, David, no! It was a mistake. I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you. Only you." She listened to her conversation with Beth 10 years ago. She saw the dried panties on the table. She was crying and didn't know what to say. "One more thing you should know. I am not Danny's biological father. Your lover Brad is. But as far as I'm concerned, she's my child, and I'm not going to let that freak of a boyfriend take her away from me." I put Danny's and my DNA paperwork on the table, and a paper that said, "No matches found." April screamed, "No, it can't be true. Please, David, please don't leave me. I love you, David. I love only you." As I was walking out the door with the last 2 suitcases, I heard her crying. Chapter 2, April's Story. Where do I start? I will try to explain what happened without telling you everything again. In some places, I will have to repeat myself so that you understand both sides of the story. As David said, we all went to the same high school. Brad was my boyfriend at the time. We were together for probably the better part of 2 years. We only had sex once, and that was in senior year. It was after one of the school dances. Brad came over to my house and no one was home. We had the usual sex that most young people have. After satiating himself and telling me what a great bitch I was, Brad headed home. I couldn't have been more disappointed. You hear all these stories and watch movies, and then you do it. Over the next few weeks, Brad wanted to do it again. I kept talking him out of it. I wasn't going to be just his plaything for fun. Then I caught him with Mary Lou behind the gym bleachers. He was fondling her, and when I saw him, I called him a big asshole and told him I wanted nothing more to do with him. He apologized to me over and over again. It didn't help, and I stopped seeing him. That's when David and I started dating. I always liked him, but I never did anything about it because I was in an ongoing relationship with Brad. Dave always thought I was dating him to make Brad jealous. There is some truth to that, but I was also a high school girl and fell in love like most girls do. I was so happy when David asked me out. Just so you know, some people call him Dave, others call him David. I use both names. It's pretty funny when you think about it. Dave thought all the girls were in love with Brad because he was a jock. In reality, most girls were in love with Dave. He was smart, handsome, in good shape like any jock, and could fix anything. We called him McDave after the TV character MacGyver. We started dating, and about 6 months later, when we were both in college classes, we had sex. Let me take that back, we made love. It was so good. After the Brad episode, I wasn't expecting much, but David was so sweet and tender. We were in his apartment, and he laid me on the bed and kissed me gently. There was no bam with him. And that's how my second sex happened. Then he lay down next to me until we both rested, and then he drove me home. We made love many times after that. We were lucky that I didn't get pregnant that first time. After we both graduated, we got married. He was a great lover. My parents liked him, but the thought of Brad being a lawyer appealed to them. I just told them I didn't love Brad, I loved David, and that was the end of it. After that, I got pregnant and we had Carly. She was so sweet and cute. Everyone, including David, thought she looked like me. I think babies look like what you want them to look like. One day she looked like me and the next day she looked like David. All I know is that she was a beautiful child. We were so happy. Life was good. Then came that awful day. We went to our 5-year reunion. We had a really good time. I guess I started putting myself out there too much. I remember dancing with Brad a few times. I wanted him to see what he had given up for Mary Lou, who ended up becoming a nun. The next day, a few classmates went out for lunch before heading home. David couldn't come because he had some cars he promised to finish. I went alone and made the biggest mistake of my life. After lunch, I went to Brad's room and he started hitting on me. I know I kept saying no because I was married, but for some ungodly reason I gave in and let him possess me. I think it had something to do with me comparing him to David. I don't know, it was just a stupid mistake. When we, or should I say he, finished, I felt nothing but humiliation. At that moment, I realized how wrong it was. We both got dressed and I had to get out of there. I drove home crying. I needed to wash away all the dirt I felt. I can tell you right now that there is no way to wash away cheating. Once you've done it, it stays forever. I called my friend Beth. I needed to tell someone how I felt. Beth was my best friend, and I knew she would always keep it a secret if I asked her to. She wasn't at her place, so I left her a message to call me. I was in the shower trying to wash away my sin when the phone rang. I heard the answering machine pick up the call and managed to get to the phone before Beth hung up. I told her what I had done and that it would lead to the end of my marriage and I would lose the man I loved. Then Beth told me not to tell him. It would only hurt him and end a good marriage. I told her she was right. I did a very stupid thing and I have to live with it. I could make it up to David by loving him and our daughter. That's what I decided to do. I forgot about the stupid answering machine, and David, as you know, got the tape and the panties I was wearing and kept them. I didn't even think about the panties. I have half a dozen pink panties, and it didn't even occur to me that one pair was missing. When David came home, I took him into the bedroom and made love to him over and over again. I really loved him and decided that I could live with the pain of what I had done as long as I had David. About 9 months later, we had our second child. We named her after David. His middle name is Daniel, so we named our sweet baby girl Danny after him. Again, everyone said she looked like me, Carly, and some said she looked like David. Personally, I thought she looked a lot like her sister Carly, and as she grew up, she looked more and more like Carly. You could tell they were sisters. Life went on and we had a wonderful life. We did everything together with the children. Little Danny always wanted to go with Daddy, and David took her with him every chance he got. They could hardly be separated. When the decade of the reunion came around, I told David I didn't want to go. I didn't know if Brad was coming from New York or not. I knew I didn't want to see him. David didn't mind. He wasn't much into reunions at all. He had specifically planned for the 4 of us to go to Kings Island Amusement Park. We spent 2 nights in a motel, took the kids on rides all day until they were tired, and made love when we got back to the room. David was a wonderful father and husband. We had DNA testing at our school. Every child could take the test, and the results were sent to the family doctor and could be picked up there. I asked David if he could go into the doctor's office and get Carly and Danny's results. He brought them home and showed them to me. It was a bunch of dots and dashes. It meant nothing to me, and David put them in the safe in case we ever needed them. In retrospect, I can remember David being a little discouraged. I thought he was sick with something, and he actually rested and drank a lot for about 3 days. He even slept on the couch, saying he didn't want me to pick up anything he might have picked up. Looking back now, I realize I didn't notice any difference in David. Danny lay down with him every morning. She tended to wake up in the middle of the night and always lay down next to Daddy. She loved him very much. Life seemed to be falling into a routine. The children were doing different things at school, and David and I attended all the events for both of them. I remember when Danny was about 9, there was a career day at school. She asked David if he could talk to the class about becoming an auto repairman. David laughed but said he would do it for her. After he spoke, Danny told the class how proud she was of her dad, and when she grew up she wanted to be an auto mechanic like him. David said he couldn't help but be proud of her. Beth was in charge of the 15-year reunion and asked me to help her with it. David was not enthusiastic about going and let me know about it. I had to go. I was part of the committee. Besides, I hadn't seen Brad in 10 years and had no feelings for him. I dressed nice for the reunion, but I always wanted to look nice. I wanted David to be proud of his wife. I was nice to people, but I tried not to flirt. I knew David hated it. When we walked through the door, Brad was already there and came over to us. I couldn't believe what David had told him. He said, "Brad, I'm tired of pretending. I don't like you and I never have. I'm not going to shake your hand and I don't expect you to spend the entire meeting with my wife." I looked at David and said, "David, how could you say such a bad thing? God, I'm embarrassed." I looked at Brad and started to apologize. David just waved his hand in disgust and walked away. Later, I walked up to David and started arguing with him. "How could you do that, David? Brad didn't do anything to deserve this. He's always treated you with respect. I was just trying to smooth things over." David must have thought I still liked Brad, which was completely untrue. David got drunk, we left the party early, and I drove him home. The next morning, he went to the store before I even got up. The girls spent the night with my mom. I stepped into the shower and then the phone rang. I was almost done and jumped out of the shower to answer it. The stupid answering machine went off and I had to wait for it to stop. It was Beth. She wanted to know if I was coming to lunch in class. She said about half the class would be there. I decided to go and see some classmates I hadn't had time to hang out with since my husband got drunk and I had to drive him home. I figured Brad would be there, but I would try to stay away from him. When I arrived at the Holiday Inn, we had the dining room reserved because so many classmates came to the reunion. They spent it there because that's where the classmates who came for the reunion were staying. I saw Brad and kept as far away as possible. I said hello to him as he approached, but tried my best to stay away from him. He almost made me flinch. I had to go into the ladies' room, which was around the corner. When I came out of the ladies' room, Brad was standing there and wouldn't let me pass. He grabbed my hands and tried to kiss me. He said that if I didn't cooperate, he would tell David about what happened at the 5-year reunion. I recoiled and kicked him in the head as hard as I could, then brought my knee up and hit him in the gonads. As I ran back to my seat, I ran past Beth and Sister Mary Lou. I know they saw the whole thing. I tried my best to be calm, but I was still a little shaky. I sat down among friends and felt much better. Brad never came back to the table. He must have gone up to his room and then gone home, I have no idea. Beth came back to the table and quietly asked if I was okay. I replied that I was, and I was going to tell David what Brad had done today. I wasn't going to say anything about the 5-year reunion, just what happened today. I had our van, and Beth asked if I could drive the 5 members of the class to the airport. They were 3 girls and 2 guys. One of the couples was married. The ride to the airport was pleasant. We dropped off the classmates, then I dropped off Beth and headed home. When I walked into the house, David was standing there. He said he had gotten home early and was going to take me out to dinner to make up for being such an idiot at the reunion the day before. I told him I had something to tell him. I was about to tell him what Brad had done when a recording played on the stupid answering machine. I told him I didn't do anything, but he didn't believe me. He didn't give me a chance to explain when he told me he had another message I needed to hear. I don't know where it came from, but he replayed my conversation with Beth about that stupid mistake the day after our 5th reunion. I listened to myself saying I was having fun with Brad. I broke down and started crying. I didn't even realize he knew about it. He asked me before turning on the tape if I had had sex with anyone since we got married. I replied, No, not knowing he had the tape. Then he gave me the worst news of my life. Our baby, our Danny, was not his biological daughter. He took the DNA printout and placed it next to Danny, along with a piece of paper that said, "No match." I wanted to die. I'll never know. He walked out the door and I sat there crying. I cried for me and I cried for David. He had been the perfect husband and father and had held it all together for 10 years. And to find out a few years after she was born that he wasn't the donor for Danny was just unbearable. He was her father, and no one could take that away. He'd been there for her from the first day he'd attended the birth, and he'd been there when he'd taken the girls to my mom's yesterday. I wanted to die. I wanted God to come down right now and just take me away. I was probably going to hell anyway for my past actions. I had lost the man I loved, and now I had to take his children and tell them that their father had abandoned me. God help me. Chapter 3. What happens next? I should have known years ago that it would eventually come to this. I'd kept her affair a secret for 10 years, and Danny's donor for at least 4. Maybe I should have done something 10 years ago and ended it then. The last 10 years have been the best and worst of my life. We're both keeping the same secret. It's crazy. Since I knew and stayed with her anyway, why don't I just tell her I knew? At least I won't be waiting for her to cheat again. Waiting to pull out the old tape and panties. Why? Why, after 10 years, did she come back and get back together with that creep? My head was spinning. I had questions for her and for myself, but no answers. Danny, my little Danny, Daddy's little girl, I wanted to make sure she never found out. She's my daughter, and I had to protect her. I had to make sure April never told her. I didn't want anyone to find out. I believe April will never find out. She was shocked when I told her about Danny's DNA and mine. Monday after school, I got a call in the garage. It was Danny. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" "I miss you." Mommy cries all the time and Carly just sits in her room. "Come home, please, Daddy." God, I wish I could touch the heartstrings. "Honey, Daddy can't come home right now. Mom and I are having some kind of problem. But I'll tell you what, I'll pick you and Carly up and we'll go out for pizza or something." "Can my mom come over?" "Not this time, honey. Maybe next time." "Go ask Carly if she wants to go." "Daddy, Carly wants to go, but she says she has to take care of Mommy." She won't stop crying. "Can you and I go to McDonald's and I'll get Carly and Mommy something?" Damn, what great kids. Always worrying about everyone else. "Yes, honey, we can do that. It's up to you to figure out what they want. I'll be there in about 20 minutes to pick you up." "Okay, Daddy, I love you." I heard a voice in the background. "Daddy, Mommy told me to tell you. We all love you. I'll see you in a little while. Bye." Damn it! I just don't know what else to say. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I hate her and I love her. Why can't I think straight? I went and talked to the guys to close the garage when they were done. I had some really good guys working for me. They knew car shit and I paid them well for it. I had their respect and they had mine. I told them that April and I were having some problems, in case I jumped them for no reason. I apologized in advance. Danny jumped into the truck and kissed me hard on the cheek. She kissed me 2 more times. She said one kiss was from Carly and the other was from Mom. With tears in my eyes, I drove to McDonald's. I informed Danny that I was staying in the garage and he and Carly could call me anytime. Even if I wasn't home, I would still be available to them at any time. I asked her to tell her mom that I had some things to tell her and I would call her tomorrow after school. The next day when I called, Carly answered the phone and said her mom was in the bathroom and would be right out. Then she asked, "Daddy, what happened so bad that you moved out? Did Mommy, me, or Danny do something? I know I'm only 12, but I'm pretty smart. I know you wouldn't just leave us like that. What happened, Dad? What did we do?" "Honey, you and Danny didn't do anything wrong. I couldn't be more proud of both of you." "What did Mommy do, Daddy?" "I know she loves you." "Daddy," she cries every night. "I'm a little afraid she might do something stupid." "I know Mom, Dad. If she's done something wrong, she'll do anything to make it right. That's the kind of person she is. Give her a chance, Dad. I don't know what she did that was so bad to make you go away. She doesn't tell us anything." "Honey, this is between Mom and me. There's nothing you can do about it. Your mom and I have some serious differences that we need to talk about. I'm glad you're at least helping her. Dad, Danny and I are here for you too. We're a family, Dad, a good family. You should know that. I love you, Daddy. I cried and tried not to show it. God, I loved my girl so much. April picked up the phone. Hey, David. April, we need to talk. I'm worried about Danny. I don't want her to find out I'm not her father. You're her father. You've always been there for her. That's what real fathers do. Dave, I never knew. I honestly never knew. I guess in a way it's a good thing I never knew. I can't talk about this over the phone, David. I need to see you to tell you what happened. April, how do you think I can believe everything you tell me? You've been lying to me for at least 10 years. As far as I know, everything you've ever told me is a lie. I don't know what to believe anymore. Dave, please meet with me and let me tell you everything I know. If you want to believe it's all a lie, so be it, but give me a chance to tell you. If not for us, then for Carly and Danny. All I ask is that you listen to me before you destroy our marriage, our family. She was crying. I could hear it over the phone. Okay, April, I'll listen to what you have to say. I don't know whether to believe anything, but I'll give you a chance to say it. Thank you, David, that's all I ask. I promise I'll answer any questions you have. Even if you don't believe me, at least I'll know I've been honest with you. The rest of the week I did my garage business. I talked to the girls every day and they told me what they were doing at school. Carly said her mom felt a little better after talking to me. My little girl thanked me for talking to her mom. I didn't feel like talking or listening to April. I didn't know if I should believe her, and I had to figure out in my mind why I hadn't left 10 years ago. The best reason I could come up with was that she was truly sorry. At least that's what it sounded like on the tape, and she was going to do her best to make it up to me. I have to say that she kept that promise right up until the last reunion dinner. I really wanted to know why she went and what she was doing there. Whether she went to see Brad or not. Hell, I wanted answers. That's why I wanted to hear what she was going to say. I showed up at the house around noon on Saturday. My two girls ran out to meet me. Daddy's here! Daddy's here! Danny shouted. She jumped into my arms and of course expected me to catch her. No problem. I would never let my baby girl fall to the ground, and she trusted me to make sure of that. Carly came running out and kissed me on the cheek. Carly said her mom was making lunch. I asked what they were having for lunch. She smiled and said that since I was here, my mom wanted to make sure we had a good meal since I probably wasn't eating right. BBQ steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, corn on the cob, and she said Mom even baked homemade bread and she helped. I helped too, Danny said. Yeah, you ate it while it was hot, Carly replied. My two daughters who fought constantly but loved each other very much. Okay, girls, let's go inside. I walked in and there was April standing in the kitchen, dressed as a Stepford wife. For those who have never heard of it, I'll tell you that these were women who were always dressed up for their husbands, usually in dresses and with perfect hair. That's exactly what April looked like. She was wearing a little apron and the table was already set. Welcome home, David, she said. She was putting herself out there. I had to stop some of it, even though I liked the way everything, including April, looked. I'm not at home, I live above the garage. This is my home for now. I came here today to talk to you, that's all. That should knock the wind out of her sails. Since lunch is ready, why don't you have lunch with us? Asked April. I didn't answer, but sat down in the chair. I was about to grab my food when Danny said, Daddy, we have to thank God. Then she continued, God is great. God is good. Let's thank him for our food. And thank you for bringing Daddy home to eat with us. Amen. Damn it, it wasn't fair. It just wasn't fair. I was here to talk. I ate an amazing dinner and I knew my kids were being honest. I know April set it up, but not the kids. They were glad Daddy came over for dinner. Damn, that woman could cook. When we were done eating, I told the girls I would take them to Grandma's and Mom would pick them up later. Dad, will you be here when we get back? No, honey, not now. I'm just here to talk to Mom, and then I'm going back to the garage. The girls looked depressed. I thanked them for helping their mom make a wonderful lunch and asked them if they wanted to go to the zoo next Saturday. They both shouted, Yes, we want to go! Can my mom go too? Damn, forgot about what they might ask. I told them I'd see them again, and I'd talk to them during the week. The whole time April just sat there, not saying a word. Then she spoke up and said she would clean up after herself, and I would take the kids to her mother's house. When I returned, she had cleaned everything up and put the leftovers into containers for me to take with me. This whole thing was a ploy on my behalf, wasn't it, April? I wanted her to know I could see right through her. Hell, anyone could see through that, but I had to start the conversation somehow. Of course it was on my part, but not on the girls' part. They were just glad their father would be here. Well, we'd better get started. I'll let you tell me anything you want to tell me. I can cut in with questions I need answered. Is that okay with you? Suit yourself, David. I just want to tell you everything and let the cards fall where they may. How many times have you had fun with Brad? My goodness, David. You don't have to be so abrupt. I told you I'd answer all your questions. Again, how many times have you had fun with Brad? Twice, once when we walked together, and that stupid time after the 5th reunion. Are you telling me you've only had sex with him twice in your entire life? It's true, David. The first time was so bad that I didn't even realize how good it could be until I made love to you. I want to add that you and Brad are the only 2 men I've ever had sex with in my entire life. I now wish I had never had sex with Brad, even the first time. Damn, that kind of threw me off a little bit. I've had sex with a lot of girls from our class. Glad I don't have to tell her about them. Why did you do it to him a second time, April? I don't know, David. Don't expect me to cry a lot right now. I'm covered in tears. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe to compare you to him? Maybe because it was so bad the first time, I might have thought it was my fault. I don't know, David. I really don't know. God, I wish I did. I wish I could go back to that day and not do it. I can wish it had never happened, but it did, David, it did, and I'll have to live with it for the rest of my life. Her eyes were watering. Why didn't you tell me? You would have left me, David. I know you would have. I don't know why you didn't when you found out. David, after it happened, I came home and spent an hour in the shower trying to wash the cheating off me. I hated what I had done to you, but all I could think about was that if I told you, you would leave me and Carly. I decided to accept the pain and be the best wife I could be. I really wanted to tell you. God, it was so hard to keep it from you, but I knew it would hurt you if you found out and we would be forced to divorce. I loved you too much to lose you, David. I still love you too much to lose you now. She started crying again. What about Danny? When did you find out I wasn't her donor? 2 weeks ago when you told me. I was devastated. I didn't know what to think. After that session with Brad, I scrubbed and scrubbed, trying to wash away thoughts of Brad. I made love to you 3 times that night. I wanted you so badly. I wanted to do anything for you. That's why I was so happy when I got pregnant. You and I had a baby together, and it felt so right. Then you showed me the DNA. I didn't know what to think. If I had known I was pregnant with Brad's baby, I would have had an abortion. I really would have. I want your kids, not someone else's. I keep thinking that if I'd known it was Brad's seed and had an abortion, there'd be no Danny. You see, I'm really worried about that too. David, like I said before, Danny is your daughter and no one else's. She will know that for the rest of her life. I don't want to see her suffer. You're her daddy, the only daddy. I thought she was crying, but apparently not. Let's move on to lunch, at which you intended to cheat on me again. God, no, David, it's not true. It is, absolutely without a doubt, not true. I was only going to lunch with half the class. April, I brought a cassette tape with me. Let's listen to it together. I turned the tape back on. Hi, April said. Hey girl, what are you up to? It was Beth. Hey Beth, just got out of the shower when I heard the phone ring. What's wrong? Lunch. Do you want to come to lunch with a group of classmates? Who's coming, Beth? Besides you and me, there's half the class. Can you make it? Brad's going, Beth? David will kill me if I go to lunch with Brad. For heaven's sake, April. This is lunch with former classmates, not sex with one ex-boyfriend. Besides, you didn't even talk to Brad last night, and it's just lunch. After the way David embarrassed me last night, it would do him good. What time and where, Beth? Holiday Inn at noon. Okay, but I have to get home before David gets off work? He has to be home by 5 or earlier. Well, that's it. You said, after David embarrassed me last night, this will serve him right. What did you mean, April? Going out to dinner with friends or having dinner with Brad? Did you have fun with him too, or were you planning on doing that? No. No, David, you misunderstood the meaning. I really meant that if I had lunch with Brad, you would be pissed. I can't deny that. The rest was just a statement people make. I had no intention of being with Brad. None whatsoever. In fact, he gave me the creeps. I tried to stay as far away from him as possible. Ask Beth, ask anyone. I tried to stay away from him, David. You see, April, I can't believe you. Maybe you're telling the truth, or maybe you're lying. I can't believe Beth. She's your best friend. She'd lie for you if you asked her to. You keep saying you've been trying to stay away from him. So you're telling me you failed? God, David, that's exactly what I've been trying to tell you. I went to the ladies' room, and when I came out, Brad was standing there. He wouldn't let me get past him, grabbed my hands and said, "Kiss me, or I'll tell your husband about the 5-year reunion dinner." So you kissed him? Is that what you're going to tell me? No, never, David. I punched him in the head with my fist and then kicked him hard in the balls with my knee. He fell to the ground and I ran back to lunch. Beth and Mary Lou appeared from around the corner. I'm not sure they saw much. You'll have to ask Beth. She'll tell you. April again? Can I believe Beth, your best friend? Why are you home so late? Your lunch certainly didn't last nearly 4 hours. When I got back to the table, I was breathing hard, and Beth asked if I was okay. She asked if I wanted to drive any of my classmates to the airport, and she would go with me. Brad was one of the people you took to the airport? No, after I hit him with my knee, he didn't come back for lunch. Besides, I think he came to the reunion in his car. According to Margaret, one of his classmates, he likes to show off his car. What kind of car does he have in April? I have no idea, David. I've never seen it, and I never wanted to see it. When you returned, you were dressed for reprisal. Why? David, I always dress well, especially for you. You know that. But I wasn't there. Were you dressing for someone else? Like for Brad? No, David. I know you won't believe this, but I used to dress for you. I always dress for you. When someone sees me, I want them to know that I am your woman. I know it's hard for you to understand because you're a man, but it's true. I didn't answer. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. I asked her if she wanted to tell me anything else before I left. Well, David, 10 years ago I made an almost tragic mistake. I say almost because Danny pulled through, and I wouldn't want to lose her for anything in the world. Other than that, I wish it would all be forgotten and faded from my memory and yours. I love you with all my heart and soul. And I always will, no matter what happens. I was stupid 10 years ago, but I haven't done anything wrong since, including that dinner. For some reason, you decided to forgive me 10 years ago. I don't know why, but nothing has changed since then. If you could forgive me then, why can't you love me now? I love you even more, and I know you love Carly and Danny. I love you, David, and I want you home with our family. She started crying again. I told her that I needed to think about it and that I would talk to her again. I told her to kiss the girls for me and went to my truck and back to the apartment above the garage. Chapter 4. Conclusion. I went home and kept listening to the tapes over and over again. I had no proof whether she was telling the truth or not. I just didn't know. A couple days later, Beth came in and said she wanted to talk to me. I made my way to the office to hear her out. She started by telling me that she found out about the affair after the 5th reunion. She talked to April, and April said that I knew about it. She said it was her suggestion that April not tell me about it. It happened, and it was over and done with. There was no benefit to telling me. She told me that the only reason April kept it from me was because she didn't want to hurt me and was afraid I would divorce her. I explained to Beth that I almost understood what had happened after the 5th reunion. I was curious to know what had happened at the 15th luncheon. Before she started, I told her that I had to take everything she said with a grain of salt, since she was such a close friend of April's. Well, I called April and asked her about the lunch since she was on the committee. She asked me if Brad would be there. I said he would be, and she wondered if she should come. I made some silly remark that I wasn't entertaining anyone, that it was just lunch. She said something about you deserved it. I think that was her way of saying she was mad at you for the night before. I truly believe she meant nothing of the sort. I realized that statement in and of itself could be misinterpreted. Beth, where she was sitting and whether she was talking to Brad. I need the truth, Beth. Lying for her won't help either of us. She sat as far away from Brad as possible. One time, Brad came up to her and she said hi to him, but that was the end of it. He went back to his seat. Later, he confronted her. I don't know what was said, but I can tell you what I saw. April came out of the restroom, and I saw Brad grab her arm, and she burst out and gave him a good kick to the head. Then she brought her knee up and hit him right in the testicles. He went down and she went back to her seat. What happened, Beth? April was a little agitated, so I calmed her down and we decided to drive a few people to the airport. It was a nice ride and April seemed to calm down. Dave, it's none of my business, but I realize you've been hurt over the years, but so has April. She's my best friend, you're right. I'm here because she loves you and you love her. You have 2 wonderful children. Don't give it all up now. She didn't do anything but eat lunch. Believe me, she had no intention of cheating on you. Thanks for stopping by, Beth. You're a good friend to April. Beth left, and I looked over what she'd said. It was pretty much the same thing April had said. I turned around and Beth walked back in. David, there's something very important I forgot to tell you. It might help you to believe me. What's the matter, Beth? The reason Brad never came back to the table is because he was taken to the hospital. Apparently, he fell and hit the side of his face on the floor, and it turned black and blue, according to the hospital report. Also, for some reason, one of his testicles had jammed and had to be thrown out. Beverly didn't show up for lunch. She works as a nurse at the hospital and called me the other day. Believe it or not, I forgot to tell April. Tell her for me, I just found out yesterday. Brad was going to sue the restaurant, but when they found out about the testicle, he decided not to sue. Thanks, Beth. That was good news, regardless of what I decide to do. I'll tell April. Maybe there's some truth to it. If only there was someone I could believe who wasn't our friend. The next day, Mary, or should I say Sister Mary Lou, came to change the oil in her convent car. While my boys were changing the oil, Sister Mary said, "You want to talk to me, don't you?" As a matter of fact, yes. Were you at lunch a couple weeks ago? David, stop beating around the bush. I may be a nun, but I've known you all my life. I know you pretty well, and I have to say you were one of the few guys I ever respected. In my wilder days, you still treated me well. You were always polite and well-mannered. I respect you for that, and I'll put in a good word for you someday. She smiled. Yes, David, I was at lunch, and yes, I saw Brad trying to hit on April. At the restroom door, I saw Brad grab April. I was going to go and try to stop him, but April didn't need any help. She lashed out and kicked Brad in the head and then hit him with her knee in the intimate area, so to speak. He went down and April walked away. I called for a waiter who was nearby and they rendered aid to Brad. That's all I saw. I don't know what's wrong, but you and April are 2 special people and deserve to be together. David, heed the words of a wise nun and friend. If you and April are having problems in your marriage, you should ask yourself just one question. Will my life be better without this person? That's the only question you have to ask yourself. We can't let things like pride and an unwillingness to forgive others for their mistakes take over our lives. Just ask yourself, would I be happier without April in my life? And act on it. I hope I've helped you in some small way. God bless you and April, Dave. I thanked Sister Mary as she got in the car and drove away. I knew I could trust her. She never knew what was wrong, and I was sure she wouldn't lie for April's sake. I would have to call April tomorrow and talk to her again. Before I could make the call, the phone rang. It was Danny. Hi, Daddy. I had to call you and ask if Mommy could go to the zoo with us, remember? Yes, honey, I remember, and yes, Mommy can come with us. I heard her yelling at Carly to tell April she was going to the zoo, too. What a family. Danny, is Mom there? I need to talk to her. She shouted into the receiver, Mommy, Daddy wants to talk to you. Here it is, Daddy. I'll see you Saturday. Hi, David. This is a nice surprise. I can go to the zoo with you. I could see that she was smiling. You could feel it on the phone. That's not why I was going to call, but you can go to the zoo. I was going to call you to let you know that Beth called me and said that Brad didn't return to his table because his right nut was stuck and his face was swollen. The restaurant staff took him to the emergency room. Unfortunately, he will live. David, those are 2 moves you taught me when we first started dating. You said that if some guy came up to my front, I should use my knee and try to hit him in the ear area. I guess I missed, but I hit him in the temple. I have you to thank for teaching me. April, after we get back from the zoo on Saturday, we need to talk again. If that's okay with you? Anything to get you back to me, I'll do, David. Anything at all. We all want you and need you to be with us, David. Well, we'll talk on Saturday. No need to make dinner. We'll eat after we see the animals. I'll see you on Saturday. Thank you, David. I love you. And she hung up. We had a good time on Saturday. I stepped back a couple times and took April's hand. Of course, she didn't say anything. We had fun feeding the animals and spending time together. It had only been 3 weeks, but it seemed like much longer. The kids couldn't have been happier. After we left the zoo, I told the girls they could choose where we would eat. I was waiting for McDonald's or Chuck E. Cheese when the girls collectively shouted out, "Red Lobster!" I looked at April, knowing it was one of her favorite restaurants, and asked if she was bribing the kids. She replied, "I told you I would never lie to you." "Yes, I bribed them." "What? What did you bribe them with?" She looked at me and said, "I promised them that I would try to convince their daddy to sleep at home tonight." I didn't respond to her answer. I asked everyone what they wanted to eat. After eating, we went to the house. It was getting late, so we sent the kids to bed. April and I then walked to the living room and sat down to talk. "What's the problem, David? What's the problem? What can I do to remedy the situation?" "April, I believe you told me the truth about lunch." "Sister Mary Lou came by and told me that she saw Brad grab you and how you responded. She had no reason to lie. My problem is that I never did anything about it 10 years ago. I feel like I should have told you or yelled at you. Maybe even divorce you, but I did nothing. I accepted your cheating and did nothing. I'm having a hard time dealing with this." "I don't understand, David. Do you want to get back at me? Do you want to have an affair?" "David, no one knows but you, me, Beth, and Brad. I didn't tell anyone else. I was too embarrassed. So, David, you want to get even with me by having an affair?" "I wish it were that simple. I love you, April, I really do. I always have. I don't need an affair. You're all I need. You see, my sister Mary Lou came by and told me she saw you fighting off Brad. Then she told me how to solve my problem." "What did she say, David?" "She said you have to ask yourself one question. Would I be happier without April in my life? And act accordingly." "What's your answer, David?" She waited again with tears in her eyes. "I want you, Carly, and Danny in my life every day." "Oh my God, David, I love you so much," and I let her kiss me. "I still have a problem, April. If I don't get back at you, I'm going to have to take it out on Brad." "David, Brad lives in New York. What can you do? Wait until the next reunion." Then we went into the bedroom and made love. I got up and put my pajamas back on. April looked at me and said, "What are you doing, David?" "I thought Danny was coming here tonight and I need some clothes." April looked at me and said, "Welcome home, David. I really do love you. I wouldn't have a life if you weren't a part of it." She fell asleep and so did I. I woke up Sunday morning with Danny lying on my arm. Looks like I'm going to have to start locking my bedroom door, but that can wait another year. I loved having my little girl with me. We all got back on track. Life really did get better. April and I promised each other we wouldn't have any more secrets. If either of us had a problem, we discussed it. Neither of us had secrets anymore, and it really took the burden off of us. Time flew by and it was time for the 20th year reunion. Beth was back on the committee, but April told her that we would both be attending, but she wasn't going to be on the committee. I called Beth, who was still April's best friend, and asked if Brad had sent back his invitation. She replied that he had, and it was for one person only. A small note, but not as important. Beth remarried a very nice realtor named Mike. We attended their wedding, and although Beth is good-looking, my April was still the most beautiful woman. I found out some things about Brad and, of course, told April. Brad was a lawyer, but not a very good one. He'd made his fortune by marrying the daughter of the firm's president. She was his secretary, but she was the one who oversaw all the twists and turns. That's why she never came to the reunions. She wasn't going to come from New York to our small country town for Brad's reunion. Brad, on the other hand, thought he was still the big man on campus. We got to the reunion early. April looked amazing. She said she dressed for me, and this time I believed her. Victoria's Secret short dress, garters, and panties. No pantyhose today. She could be my wife, but I could have fun with her right there on the floor. We acted like two newlyweds. All of our friends were coming up to us, and then I saw Brad standing at the bar. He was bald and must have gained 30 pounds in the last 5 years. He was telling one of his old friends about his new Mercedes with the leather interior. I headed towards him and April got scared and came with me. His friend stepped back, seeing that I didn't look too happy. I walked over to Brad and said, "My wife said there was something you wanted to tell me at the last meeting." "What is it?" Brad looked nervous. I don't remember. I'm sorry." "Well, I have something to say to you, you fat freak. If you so much as lay a finger on my wife, I'm going to hurt you very badly." "Very hurt? Do I make myself clear, you overrated piece of shit?" "Yes, I hear you." He quickly turned around and walked away. This time, April leaned over and kissed me and said, "I love you, David." I asked, "Enough to make love to me right here at this party?" "David, you can't be serious. I don't want to show myself to anyone but you. Come with me. I want you now." We walked out into the parking lot and found Brad's car. It was unlocked, and April and I got in the back seat. A few weeks later, we learned that the car belonged to Brad's wife, and he had borrowed it to show off at a reception. "We can't do it here, David." "Of course we can." She got in the car. What a beautiful car. Big, cool leather seats. But we had to get the whole car dirty and leave our panties in there. We got out of the car and headed back to the party. The party was ending, and we were getting ready to leave. April was saying goodbye to us, and I went out on the porch and saw Brad standing around the corner, smoking a joint. I walked over to him and punched him in the middle of his torso. He fell to the ground and I picked him up and punched him in the kidneys. He fell to the ground and wet himself. And I started pissing on him when April came out and asked what I was doing. I told her I couldn't wait. She replied that she couldn't wait either. While I was standing on his arms, she walked over to him and went down on his head. She emptied her bladder completely. I told her that it reminded me of how an elephant pees at the zoo. She asked, "Is that revenge enough, sweetheart?" I told her it was my pleasure, and we went to the car and headed home. I heard him yelling that he was going to sue us. I told him it wouldn't come to court because I would come to New York and hurt him. He never filed a lawsuit. When we got home, she smiled and said that what we had done was bad, but she was so glad I had gotten my revenge. I told her that the revenge wouldn't be finalized until a few days later. I told her I would keep her in suspense. On Monday, I told her she had to call. I bought a track phone so the number can't be traced. A track phone is a small phone to buy with so many minutes. We could get rid of it when we were done calling. I asked her to call Brad's office. I figured he probably wouldn't show up the first day after the humiliation he'd been through. He needs a day to clean up his act. Of course, I wanted his wife's secretary to pick up the phone. April looked at me, smiled, and said, "Oh, David, you're mean." I told April what I wanted her to say, and she shook her head and said, "Honey, I don't ever want you to be mad at me again." She called Brad's office and was put through to the receptionist. She asked to speak to Brad, but was told he wasn't home, so she asked if she could speak to his secretary. When the secretary wife answered the phone, April told her that she had left a personal item in Brad's car and asked if he could mail it to her. The secretary asked what it was, and April replied that it was something personal. The receptionist told her it was okay, that she would keep it quiet. My panties. I left my panties in the back seat of his car. I wouldn't have called, but it was his gift from Victoria's Secret, and I wanted to keep it. You could feel the secretary's fury on the phone, but we realized she needed all the information she could get. She asked, "Who is this and how do you know Brad?" April said, "I'm his longtime high school girlfriend and we meet at reunions. Would you mind asking him to send them to me? Will they fit with my set? He knows where I live. Oh, I'm sorry. Please tell him I'm sorry his wife passed away. I'll pass on all the information, you can rest assured." "What did you say your name was?" "Mary Lou." "I promise he'll remember me. Thanks again, and please tell him I said hi." April then hung up the phone. April looked at me and said, "David, I didn't feel entitled to do that. I know he deserved it. I want you to know that I did it for you. I promised you that I would do anything you asked. Please don't ask me for any more of these things. April, I think you've proven your love to me. I promise I will never ask you to go against what you think is wrong. I think our revenge is final. The only thing is, if Danny ever needs a kidney, I'll have to go to New York and cut it out myself from Brad. My family comes first. Epilogue. Life went on. We never talked about Brad again. We attended the 25th reunion, but Brad didn't show up. The rumor was that he was divorced and had been kicked out of the firm. He started working at another firm with much less benefits. We heard that his wife found 2 pairs of panties in the back of her Mercedes. Brad denied everything and said he was set up, so his wife took a DNA test, and the panties turned out to have Brad's fingerprints on them. That was enough for her to be convinced he was cheating. We heard he was having affairs with several other secretaries in his office. He used his position to get women. 2 former secretaries sued him. She never sent the panties back to us unless Sister Mary Lou got them. Carly became a teacher and is now married with a family of her own. Danny's married to a race car driver. She runs our garage and makes a ton of profit. She ended up meeting a fellow racer who said she's the best mechanic he's ever seen and definitely the prettiest. She has a lot of drivers coming to her for repairs. They have 2 children of their own. She always said she wanted to take after her father as an example. She told me that some drivers call her McDunny. At our 30th reunion, the committee called April and I to the podium. We were given an award as the happiest married couple in our class. They asked us what our secret was after all these years when there is so much divorce and separation in today's society. I looked at April and said, "Years ago, a very close friend told me the secret between marriage and divorce. She said, just ask yourself if you would be a happier person without April in your life, and act accordingly. And act accordingly." I always answer that I am much happier with April in my life. As I looked around the crowd, I saw Mary Lou's smiling sister and smiled back at her. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next videos.